Welcome, everyone. We certainly thank you for taking this time out to come and spend this morning with us. And as we do this community reading every year, we've been doing it for a while. So again, we thank you. I want to introduce Brother Walter Black, but before I do that, there's a few things I want to say. You know, year after year, we have a lot of young people who are willing to read because they could be someplace else on a Saturday. So I'm going to ask our young people if they would stand up. Stand up, young people. If you're still in school, stand up. Thank you. Because they could be doing something else other than spending a Saturday out here in this heat. Thank you very much. Let me introduce Brother Walter Black, who will be our MC today. And by the way, I don't know if I introduced myself, but for those of you who do not know me, my name is Vicki Wilson. I think you probably know who I am. Or you've gotten an email from me somewhere along the line. So Brother Walter Black will be your MC today. And not only that, but guess what? He turns 90 years young tomorrow. So that's a big happy birthday to him. So inside of your pamphlet is the complete reading of the speech that we have today. You can read along silently, of course, as our readers come. You will now have a copy of that for whatever you'd like to do with that. Hopefully to just hold on to it. So again, we thank you, we thank you, we thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Vicki, and again, thank you all for being here. And Vicki, I appreciate you clarifying my age, because some of my friends think that perhaps I was back there during the days of Frederick. We will be have right at this point the invocation by the very Reverend Gregory Powell.
Good morning, everybody. You know, I just found out 5 minutes ago that the reading we're about to hear is not the full, complete reading. I had never seen that little bit of writing at the bottom. And I did not know that part of what was left out was Douglas's well-earned critique of the church. And as I've got my collar on and represent the church, I encourage you somewhere this weekend, somewhere today, to go read the full thing, because Frederick reserved some of his most scathing words to the church, and they're worth reading. So, let us pray. In 2026, we gather in the name of the one who 174 years ago prepared a great platform from which Frederick Douglass spoke truth to a nation, of whom few were ready to hear it, and even fewer ready to receive it and repent. We today invoke the name of the one who hears the cry of injustice and in response sends messengers filled with the fire of truth, and whose words are like arrows shot toward the heart in love. As we prepare to again set these words to flight, we remember the injustice done in Texas to Lorenzo Salgado Araujo, and the cries of his family and community, in whose names the Holy One has surely sent messengers of truth in Texas. As we again prepare our hearts to receive Frederick's fiery love, needed today as in 1852, we cry for justice for the family of Nolan Xavier Wells in Mississippi, and for those called like Frederick to speak truth to power no matter the cost. This is a solemn and holy thing we do today in the name of justice, truth, and freedom for all people of every race, nation, religion, and creed. Amen.
We will now have singing of the lift every voice and sing by soloist Donna Bowser.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise as the listening skies. Let it resound high as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has taught us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won, and God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us along this way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever on this path, we pray. Lest our feet stray from the path, oh our Lord, where you led thee, lest our hearts drunk with the wine of this world we forget thee, shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land.
Thank you, Dana. I'm going to share with you a brief background of the history of the occasion for today. What to the slave is the 4th of July? Was the question Frederick Douglass posed to a gathering of 500 to 600 abolitionists in Rochester, New York on July the 5th, 1852. At the invitation of the Rochester Ladies Anti-Slavery Society, it was noted by a local newspaper that when Frederick Douglass finished and sat down, there was a universal burst of applause. This speech, receiving an overwhelming endorsement, sold over 700 copies and would be remembered as one of the most poignant addresses by Douglass, a former slave turned statesman. Refusing to celebrate the 4th of July until all slaves were emancipated, in his speech, Douglass acknowledged that the 4th of July, a commemoration to the birth of our nation and anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, should be celebrated and the founding father be honored. The dilemma he faced, however, was that the ideals of liberty and equal rights for all remained unfulfilled for blacks enslaved in the South. In his article, Frederick Douglass, A Life and Times, James Colaco wrote, Frederick Douglass inspired, converted, and provoked. He mesmerized his audiences. No speaker was more impassioned, more devoted to the advancement of human rights. No person understood better the meaning of the American creed as embodied in the Declaration of Independence and the preamble to the United States Constitution. And no one was more eloquent in summoning the nation to fulfill this creed for all, regardless of race. What to the slave is the 4th of July? Awakened the conscience of the nation. And Douglass's speech, in as much a piercing accounting of the national hypocrisy on what he referred to as a day of as if it was a call to action. Sun is kind of difficult up here. Yeah. So we're going to move right into the meaning of the 4th of July for the Negro, speech given by Frederick Douglass on July the 5th, 1852. The first reader will be President of the Frederick Douglass Honor Society, Edward Boots Robinson, and then you all follow readers. If you follow your program, just come on up when it's your time.
Thank you very much. And happy birthday, by the way. Hello, good morning. Good morning. All right. Mr. President, friends, fellow citizens, the task before me is one which requires much previous thought and study for its proper performance. I do not remember ever to have appeared as a speaker before any assembly, non-shrinkers, nor with greater distrust of my ability than I do this day.
The papers and placards say that I'm here to deliver a 4th of July oration. The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, the distance between the platform and the slave plantation from which I escaped is considerable, and the difficulties to overcome in getting from the latter to the former are by no means slight. That I'm here today is, to me, a matter of astonishment as well as of gratitude.
This, for the purpose of this celebration, is the 4th of July. It is the birthday of your national independence and your political freedom. This to you is what the Passover was to the emancipated people of God. It carries your minds back to the day and to the act of great deliverance.
This celebration also marks the beginning of another year of your national life. and reminds you that the Republic of America is now 76 years old. I am glad, fellow citizens, that your nation is so young. You are, even now, only in the beginning of your national career, still lingering in the period of childhood. I repeat, I am glad this is so. There is hope in the thought, and hope is much needed, under the dark clouds which lower above the horizon.
Fellow citizens, 76 years ago, the people of this country were British subjects. The style and title of your sovereign people, in which you now glory, was not then born. You were under the British crown. Your fathers esteemed the English government as the home government. England as the fatherland, although a considerable distance from your home, imposed in the exercise of its parental prerogatives upon its colonial children such restraints, burdens, and limitations as, in its mature judgment, it deemed wise, right, and proper.
But your fathers, who had not adopted the idea of the infallibility of government and the absolute character of its acts, presumed to differ from the home government in respect to the wisdom and the justice of some of those burdens and restraints. They went so far as to pronounce the measures of government unjust, unreasonable, and oppressive, and altogether such as ought not to be quietly submitted to.
I sacredly need say, fellow citizens, that is my opinion of those measures fully accords with that of your fathers, feeling themselves harshly and unjustly treated by the home government. Your fathers, like men of honesty, men of spirit, earnestly sought redress. They petitioned and remonstrated. They did so in a decorous, respectful, and loyal manner. This, however, did not answer the purpose. They saw themselves treated with sovereign indifference, coldness, and scorn, yet they persevered.
Oppression makes a wise man mad. Your fathers became restive under this treatment. They felt themselves the victim of grievous wrongs, wholly incurable in their colonial capacity. With brave men, there is always a remedy for oppression.
Just here, the idea of total separation of the colonies from the crown was born. It was a startling idea, much more so than we, at this distance of time, regarded. The timid and prudent of that day were, of course, shocked and alarmed by it. Their opposition to the then dangerous thought was earnest and powerful, but amid all their terror and affrighted vociferations against it, the alarming and revolutionary idea moved on and the country with it. On the 2nd of July, 1776, the Old Continental Congress, to the dismay of the lovers of ease and the worshippers of property, clothed that dreadful idea with all the authority of national sanction. They did so in the form of a resolution. We seldom hit upon resolutions drawn up in our day whose transparency is at all equal. It resolved that these united colonies are, and of right, ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown.
Citizens, your fathers made good that resolution. They succeeded, and today you reap the fruits of their success. The freedom gained is yours, and you, therefore, may properly celebrate this anniversary. The 4th of July is the first great fact in your nation's history, the very ring bolt in the change of your yet undeveloped destiny.
Pride and patriotism, not less than gratitude, prompt you to celebrate and hold it in perpetual remembrance. I have said that the Declaration of Independence is the ring bolt to the chain of your nation's destiny. So indeed I regard it. The principles contained in that instrument are saving principles. Stand by those principles, be true to them on all occasions, in all places, against all foes, and at whatever cost. Fellow citizens, I am not wanting in respect for the fathers of this republic. The signers of the Declaration of Independence were brave men. I cannot contemplate their great deeds with less than admiration. They were statesmen, patriots, and heroes. And for the good they did and the principles they contended for, I will unite with you to honor their memory.
They love their country better than their own private interests, and all will concede that it is a rare virtue that ought to command respect. He who will intelligently lay down his life for his country is a man whom it is not in human nature to despise. Your fathers staked their lives, their fortune, and their sacred honor on the cause of their country. In their admiration of liberty, they lost sight of all other interests. They were peace men, but they preferred revolution to peaceful submission to bondage. They were quiet men, but they did not shrink from agitating against oppression. They showed forbearance, but they knew its limits. They believed in order, but not in the order of tyranny.
With them, justice, liberty, and humanity were final, not slavery and oppression. You may well cherish the memory of such men. They were great in their day and generation. Their solid manhood stands out the more as we contrast it with the degenerate times.
How circumspect, exact, and proportionate were all their movements, how unlike the politicians of an hour. Their statesmanship looked beyond the passing moment and stretched away in strength into the distant future. Mark them, fully appreciating the hardship to be encountered, firmly believing in the right of their cause, wisely measuring the terrible odds against them. Your fathers, the fathers of this republic, laid the cornerstone of the national superstructure, which has risen and still rises in grandeur around you.
Of this fundamental work, this day is the anniversary. Our eyes are met with demonstrations of your joyous enthusiasm. The causes which led to the separation of the colonies from the British Crown have never lacked for a tongue.
They have all been taught in your common schools, narrated at your firesides, and thundered and unfolded from your pulpits, and thundered from your legislative halls, and are as familiar to you as household words. They form the staple of your national poetry and eloquence. I have therefore the great deeds of your fathers. I leave therefore the great deeds of your fathers to others.
My business, if I have any here today, is with the present. The accepted time with God and His cause is the ever-living now. We have to do with the past only as we can make it useful to the present and to the future. Now is the time, the important time.
Your fathers have lived, died, and have done their work, and have done much of it well. You live and must die and must do your work. You have no right to enjoy a child's share in the labor of your fathers unless your children are blessed by your labors. Have you no right to wear out and waste the hard-earned fame of your fathers to cover your indolence?
Fellow citizens, pardon me, allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I, therefore, called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us.
Would to God, both for your sakes and ours, that an affirmative answer could be truthfully returned to these questions. Then would my task be light and my burden easy and delightful. But such is not the state of the case. I say it with a sad sense of the disparity between us. I am not included within the pale of the glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us.
The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me.
This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthems were inhuman mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today?
Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions whose chains, heavy and grievous yesterday, are today rendered more intolerable by the jubilee shouts that reach them. To forget them, to pass lightly over their wrongs, and to chime in with the popular theme would be treason, most scandalous and shocking, and would make me a reproach before God and the world.
My subject, then, fellow citizens, is American slavery. I shall see this day from the slave's point of view. Standing here, identified with the American bondman, making his wrongs mine, I do not hesitate to declare with all my soul that the character and conduct of this nation never looked blacker to me than on this 4th of July. Whether we turn to the declarations of the past or the professions of the present, the conduct of the nation seems equally hideous and revolting. America is false to the past, false to the present, and solemnly binds herself to be false to the future.
Standing with God and the crushed and bleeding slave on this occasion, I will, in the name of humanity, which is outraged, in the name of liberty, which is fettered, in the name of the Constitution and the Bible, which are disregarded and trampled upon, dare to call in question and to denounce with all the emphasis I can command everything that serves to perpetuate slavery, the great sin and shame of America. I will not equivocate, I will not excuse.
I will use the severest language I can command, and yet not one word shall escape me that any man whose judgment is not blinded by prejudice or who is not at heart a slaveholder shall not confess to be right and just. I fancy I hear some of my audience say, it is just in this circumstance that you and your brother abolitionists fail to make a favorable impression on the public mind. Would you argue more and denounce less? Would you persuade more and rebuke less? Your cause would be much more likely to succeed. But I submit, where all is plain, there is nothing to be argued. What point in the anti-slavery creed would you have me argue? On what branch of the subject do the people of this country need light?
Must I undertake to prove that the slave is a man? The slaveholders themselves acknowledge it in the enactment of laws for their government. They acknowledge it when they punish disobedience on the part of the slave. There are 72 crimes in the state of Virginia, which, if committed by a black man, subject him to the punishment of death, while only 2 of the same crimes will subject a white man to the like punishment. What is this but the acknowledgement that the slave is a moral, intellectual, and responsible being?
Southern statute books are covered with enactments forbidding, under severe fines and penalties, the teaching of the slave to read or to write. When you can point to any such laws in reference to the beasts of the field, then I may consent to argue the manhood of the slave. When the dogs in your streets, when the fowls of the air, when the cattle on your hills, when the fish of the sea, and the reptiles that crawl shall be unable to distinguish the slave from a brute, then will I argue with you that the slave is a man.
It is not astonishing that while we are plowing, planting, and reaping, using all kinds of mechanical tools, erecting houses, constructing bridges, building ships, working in metals of brass, iron, copper, silver, and gold, that while we are reading, writing, and ciphering, acting as clerks, merchants, and secretaries, having among us lawyers, doctors, ministers, poets, authors, editors, orators, and teachers,
that while we are engaged in all manner of enterprises common to other men, digging gold in California, capturing whale in the Pacific, feeding sheep and cattle on the hillside, living, moving, acting, thinking, planning, living with families as husbands and wives and children, and above all, confessing and worshiping the Christian God, and looking hopefully for life and mortality beyond the grave. We are called upon to prove that we are men.
Would you have me argue that man is entitled to liberty, that he is the rightful owner of his own body? You have already declared it. Must I argue the wrongfulness to slavery? Is it to be settled by the rules and logic and argumentation as a matter of receipts with great difficulty, involving a doubtful application to the principle of justice? Hard to be understood.
How should I look today in the presence of Americans to show that men have a natural right to freedom? To do so would be to make myself ridiculous and to offer an insult to your understanding. There is not a man beneath the canopy of heaven that does not know that slavery is wrong for him.
What? Am I to argue that it is wrong to make men brutes, to rob them of their liberty, to work them without wages, to keep them ignorant of their relations to their fellow men, to beat them with sticks, to flay their flesh with the lash, to load their limbs with irons, to hunt them with dogs, to sell them at auction, to sunder their families, to knock out their teeth, to burn their flesh, to starve them into obedience and submission to their masters? Must I argue that a system thus marked with blood and stained with pollution is wrong? No, I will not. I have better employments for my time and strength than such arguments would imply.
What then remains to be argued? Is it that slavery is not divine? That God did not establish it? That our doctors of divinity are mistaken? There is blasphemy in the thought. That which is inhuman cannot be divine. Who can reason on such a proposition? I cannot. The time for such argument is past.
At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. Oh, had I the ability, and could I reach the nation's ear, I would, today, pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder.
We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened, the conscience of the nation must be roused, and the propriety of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed, and its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced.
What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity, your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless.
Your denunciation of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence, your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery, your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity are to him a bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages.
There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. Go where you may, search where you will, roam through all the monarchies and despotisms of the old world, search out every abuse, and when you have found the last, lay your facts by the side of the everyday practices of this nation, and you will say with me that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without a rival.
Take the American slave trade, which we are told by the papers is especially prosperous just now, as the price of men was never higher, and which is carried on in all large towns and cities in one half of this Confederacy. This trade is one of the peculiarities of American institutions. In several states, this trade is a chief source of wealth. It is called the internal slave trade, in order to divert it from the horror with which the foreign slave trade is contemplated.
The foreign slave trade has long been denounced by this government as piracy, as an execrable traffic. To arrest it, this nation keeps a squadron at immense cost on the coast of Africa. Everywhere in this country, it is safe to speak of this foreign slave trade as a most inhuman traffic, opposed alike by the laws of God and of man. It is, however, a no-table fact that while so much execration is poured out by Americans upon those engaged in the foreign slave trade, the men engaged in the slave trade between the states pass without condemnation, and their business is deemed honorable.
Behold the practical operation of this internal slave trade, the American slave trade, sustained by American politics and American religion. Here you will see men and women reared like swine for the market. You know what is a swine drover? I'll show you a man drover. They inhabit all our southern states. They preamble the country. They crowd the highways of the nation with droves of human stock.
You will see one of these human flesh jobbers armed with pistol, whip, and bowie knife, driving a company of 100 men, women, and children from the Potomac to the slave market at New Orleans. These wretched people are to be sold singly or in lots to suit purchasers. They are food for the cotton field and the deadly sugar mill.
Mark the sad procession as it moves wearily along, and the inhuman wretch who drives them. Hear his savage yells and his blood-chilling oaths as he hurries on his affrighted captives. There, see the old man with locks thin and gray. Cast one glance, if you please, upon that young mother whose shoulders are bare to the scorching sun. Her brinery, tears falling on the brow of the babe. In her arms, see, too, the girl of 13, weeping, yes, weeping, as she thinks of the mother from whom she has torn.
The drove moves tardily. Heat and sorrow have nearly consumed their strength. Suddenly, you hear a quick snap like the discharge of a rifle. The fetters clank, and the chain rattles simultaneously. Your ears are saluted with a scream. That seems to have torn its way to the center of your soul. The crack you heard was the sound of the slave whip. The scream you heard was from the woman you saw with the babe. Her speed had faltered under the weight of her child and her chains. That gash on her shoulder tells her to move on.
Follow this drove to New Orleans. Attend the auction. See men examined like horses. See the forms of women rudely and brutally exposed to the shocking gaze of American slave buyers. See this drove sold and separated forever, and never forget the deep, sad sobs that arose from that scattered multitude. Tell me, citizens, where, under the sun, you can witness a spectacle more fiendish and shocking. Yet this is but a glance at the American slave trade as it exists at this moment in the ruling of the part of the United States.
I was born amid such sights and scenes. To me, the American slave trade is a terrible reality. The fleshmongers gather up their victims by dozens and drive them, chained to the General Depot at Baltimore. When a sufficient number has been collected here, a ship is chartered for the purpose of conveying the forlorn crew to Mobile or to New Orleans. From the slave prison to the ship, they are usually driven in the darkness of night. In the deep, still darkness of midnight, I have been often aroused by the dead, heavy footsteps, and the piteous cries of the chain gangs that passed our door.
Fellow citizens, this murderous traffic is today an active operation in this boasted republic. In the solitude of my spirit, I see clouds of dust raised on the highways of the South. I see the bleeding footsteps. I hear the doleful wail of fettered humanity on the way to the slave markets where the victims are to be sold like horses, sheep, and swine, knocked off to the highest bidder. There I see the tenderest ties ruthlessly broken to gratify the lust, caprice, and rapacity of buyers and sellers of men. My soul sickens at the sight.
But a still more inhuman, disgraceful, and scandalous state of things remains to be presented by an act of the American Congress, not yet 2 years old. Slavery has been nationalized in its most horrible and revolting form. Mason and Dixon's line has been obliterated. New York has become as Virginia, and the power to hold, hunt, and sell men, women, and children as slaves
remains no longer a mere state institution, but is now an institution of the whole United States.
The power is coextensive with the Star-Spangled Banner and American Christianity. Where these go may also go the merciless slave hunter. Where these men are, man is not sacred. He's the bird for the sportsman's gun. By the most foul and fiendish of all human decrees, the liberty and person of every man are put in peril. Your broad reputation, Republican domain, is hunting ground for men.
Your lawmakers have commanded all good citizens to engage in this hellish sport. Your president, your secretary of state enforce as a duty you owe to your free and glorious country and to your God, that you do this accursed thing. Not fewer than 40 Americans have, within the past 2 years, been hunted down and without a moment's warning hurried away in chains and consigned to slavery and excruciating torture. Some of these have had wives and children, dependent on them for bread. But know this, no account was made. The right of the hunter to his prey stands superior to the right of marriage, and to all the rights of the Republic, the rights of God included.
For black men, there is neither law nor justice, humanity nor religion. The fugitive slave law makes mercy to them a crime and bribes the judge who tries them. An American judge gets $10 for every victim he consigns to a slavery, and 5 when he fails to do so. The oath of any 2 villains is sufficient under this hell-black enactment to send the most pious and exemplary black man into the remorseless jaws of slavery. His own testimony is nothing. He can bring no witnesses for himself. The minister of American justice is bound by the law to hear but one side, and that side is the side of the oppressor.
Let this damning fact be perpetually told. Let it be thundered around the world that in tyranny-killing, king-hating, people-loving, democratic Christian America, the seats of justice are filled with judges who hold their offices under an open and palpable bribe and are bound in deciding, in the case of a man's liberty, to hear only his accusers.
In glaring violation of justice, in shameless disregard of the forms of administrating law, in cunning arrangement to entrap the defenseless, and in diabolical intent, this fugitive slave law stands alone in the annals of tyrannical legislation.
Americans, your Republican politics, not less than your Republican religion, are flagrantly inconsistent. You boast of your love of liberty, your superior civilization, and your pure Christianity, while the whole political power of the nation is solemnly pledged to support and perpetuate the enslavement of 3 million of your countrymen. You hurl your anathemas at the crown-headed tyrants of Russia and Austria and pride yourselves on your democratic institutions, while you yourselves consent to be the mere tools and bodyguards of the tyrants of Virginia and Carolina.
You invite to your shores fugitives of oppression from abroad. Honor them with banquets, greet them with ovations, cheer them, toast them, salute them, protect them, and pour out your money to them like water. But the fugitives from your own land you advertise, hunt, arrest, shoot, and kill. You glory in your refinement and your universal education, yet you maintain a system as barbarous and dreadful as ever stained the character of a nation. A system begun in avarice, supported in pride, and perpetuated in cruelty.
You shed tears over fallen Hungary and make the sad story of her wrongs the theme of your poets, statesmen, and orators. Tell your gallant sons are ready to fly to arms to vindicate her cause against the oppressor. But in regard to the 10,000 wrongs of American slave, you would enforce the strictest silence and would hail him as an enemy of the nation who dares to make those wrongs the subject of public discourse. You are all on fire at the mention of liberty for France or for Ireland, but are as cold as an iceberg at the thought of liberty for the enslaved of America.
You discourse equity and dignity of labor, yet you sustain a system which in very essence casts a stigma upon labor. You can bare your bosom to the storm of British artillery to throw off the 3-penny tax on tea, and yet wring this lad hard-earned farthing from the grasp of the black laborers of your country.
You profess to believe that of one blood God made all nations of men to dwell on the face of all the earth, and hath commanded all men everywhere to love one another. Yet you notoriously hate and glory in your hatred all men whose skins are not colored like your own.
You declare before the world and are understood by the world to declare that you hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And yet you hold securely in bondage, which according to your own Thomas Jefferson is worse than ages of which your fathers rose in rebellion to oppose the seventh part of the inhabitants of your country.
Fellow citizens, I will not enlarge further on your national inconsistencies. The existence of slavery in this country brands your republicanism as a sham, your humanity as a base pretense, and your Christianity as a lie. It destroys your moral power abroad. It corrupts your politicians at home. It saps the foundation of religion. It makes your name a hissing and a byword to a mocking earth.
It is the antagonistic force in your government, the only thing that seriously disturbs and endangers your union. It fetters your progress. It is the enemy of improvement, the deadly foe of education. It fosters pride. It breeds insolence. It promotes vice. It shelters crime. It is a curse to the earth that supports it. And yet, you cling to it as if it were the sheet anchor of all your hopes. Be warned, a horrible reptile is coiled up in your nation's bosom. The venomous creature is nursing at the tender breast of your youthful republic. For the love of God, tear away and fling from you the hideous monster, and let the weight of 20 millions crush and destroy it forever. But it is answered in reply to all this, that precisely what I have now denounced is, in fact, guaranteed and sanctioned by the Constitution of the United States. That the right to hold and to hunt slaves is a part of that Constitution, framed by the illustrious fathers of this republic. Then I dare to affirm Notwithstanding all I have said before, your fathers, instead of being the honest men I have before declared them to be, were the various impostors that ever practiced on mankind.
This is the inevitable conclusion, and from it there is no escape. But I differ from those who charge this baseness on the framers of the Constitution of the United States. It is slander upon their memory, at least so I believe. And others have, as I think, fully and clearly vindicated the Constitution from any design to support slavery for an hour.
Allow me to say, in conclusion, notwithstanding the dark pictures I have this day presented of the state of the nation, I do not despair of this country. There are forces in operation which must inevitably work the downfall of slavery, and I therefore leave off where I began, with hope.
While drawing encouragement from the Declaration of Independence, the great principles it contains, and the genius of American institutions, my spirit is cheered by the obvious tendencies of the age. Nations do not now stand in the same relation to each other that they did ages ago. No nation can now shut itself up from the surrounding world and trot round in the same old path of its fathers without interference.
The time was when such could be done, but a change has now come over the affairs of mankind. Walled cities and empires have now become unfashionable. The arm of commerce has borne away the gates of the strong city. Intelligence is penetrating the darkest corners of the globe. Wind, steam, and lightning are its chartered agents. Oceans now no longer divide, but link nations together. From Boston to London is now a holiday excursion. Space is comparatively annihilated. Thoughts expressed on one side of the Atlantic are distinctly heard on the other.
In the fervent aspirations of William Lloyd Garrison, I say, and let every heart join in and sing, all God, speed the day when human blood shall cease to flow, and every clime be understood, the claims of human brotherhood, and each return for evil good, not blow for blow. That day will come, all feuds to end, and change into a faithful friend, each foe.
We thank you for all who have participated in this wonderful occasion today. We've come together today to continue the legacy of Frederick Douglass. And the idea of having today's date was, I've been told, was initiated by Annie Mewburn and Claudine Black. Give them a round of applause, please. As I sat there listening to the words of that great orator Frederick Douglass, the thought occurred to me that all we need to do is change the date. And we would still be addressing some of the issues, important issues of this country and the world. In addition to the great words that you have just read, let's leave here with the words that are on the back of the base of the Frederick Douglass statue. It reads, "In a composite nation like ours, as before the law, there should be no rich, no poor, no high, no low, no white, no black, but common country, common citizen, equal rights, and a common destiny." We thank you all for being here today and participating. Our vacation. Years ago, it was said that James Brown was the hardest working man in show business. Vicki Wilson is definitely not. And just before I give this mic to her, all of the Frederick Douglass Honor Society members, please stand.
Wait,
Now to the hardest working lady in Frederick Douglass Honor Society, Vicki Wilson.
That's not true. But anyway, we thank you again for coming. I know a lot of you said, I want to read next year, and you left your name with Harriet and Jessica at that table. But I need an email. I can't do much without your email. Those of you I email and you readily say yes, I thank you again. And so all the students who participated today, stop by the table for a free shirt. We want to thank our students. We want to thank all of you for coming. Oh, and don't forget, September 26th is Frederick Douglass Day. So we will start with the parade, and then we're here at the Welcome Center at 11 o'clock. We have a full day of events. So please join us again for Frederick Douglass Day on September 26th. Thank you and have a blessed rest of the day.